Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miami Hall of Famer and Olympic gold medalist Bob Schul.
Thank you. I won it again, thank goodness. I really get worried the last 60 seconds of that race. I tell you, my brother tells me that he was watching this race. He was a Miami alum also. And he was sitting in his chair, and you got to know him because he's kind of laid back. And I think at the time he was smoking a pipe. He doesn't do that anymore, but he did in those days. And he said he was sitting on the couch, he was watching the race, and pretty soon he got about the third lap from the end, and he said he got a little closer to the edge of the couch. And then the second lap, and he said he got down on his knees, and he said before the race was over, he was about 2 feet from the TV screen screaming at it. But I think he helped. First of all, I want to congratulate all the seniors who are here, and especially those who got awards. I always look, I did coach at Wright State after I retired from teaching, and before that, I retired from my store, and before that, I retired from doing some of the industry. I had all these jobs. Nobody wanted to keep me anyplace. But anyway, in all this, the seniors who got the GPAs, tremendous. My cross-country kids at Wright State, men and women, were always up in their scores, usually first, second, or third, and I was very proud of what they did. My bullwhip helped a lot, but they were great athletes and great students, and that's a tremendous thing. I must tell you, though, I'm going to tell you a story of how this came about when I was in Olympic Village, when I came to this particular race, because some of you, I don't know if there's anybody that's going to try to become an Olympian. I hope so. But let me just tell you what that day was like. I have to give you some background because I had the fastest time in the world that year of 13:38, 3 seconds off the world record. And when I did 13:38, I ran the last lap in 54 seconds. I also ran this last lap in 54 seconds, and the last 300 was 38.7. That's 50-second pace in the mud. 2 days later, in sunshine, the 1,500 meters was won, and the last 300 meters was run in 38.7 on a dry track. And so that day, as I got up at about 6 o'clock in the morning to do my morning workout, it was pouring down rain. As you can see, it was raining here too. And I went downstairs, and usually I went outside of the Olympic Village, took a bus to a site where they had a training track. But with the rain, it wasn't going to work. So I just did some easy jogging in the lower floor of our dormitory. Finished up and went back upstairs. And at this point, then you start to think about the race, but you don't want to be thinking about it too much. All of you as athletes understand that, adrenaline is very useful, and you sure don't want to use it before the fact. And so you try to keep yourself calm. I went downstairs and I watched TV, and the Japanese had about 5 channels going with no commercials, which was kind of nice for a change. And you could watch all the different sports that were going on at that time. We had swimmers in our dormitory, a few, and some of them were there in the room. They wanted to watch swimming, but I would tell you that we had the shot putters and the discus throwers there also, and nobody was going to touch that TV set. So anyway, I had to just kind of wait before I was going to go eat my pre-meet meal. We ran at 4 o'clock. I like 5 hours before I ran, and so at 11 o'clock I made my way to the U.S. cafeteria. I don't know what I ate. I don't even know. But I think it was probably cereal and just something very light, just enough to give me some energy because it wasn't going to get into my system much anyway. Came back. I tried to watch TV again, but now I was getting too nervous doing it. So I went up to my room on the 3rd floor, the farthest room in the back of that dormitory I could find. And I read some of the manuals again from Europe, talking about Jazzy and Norpoth. Clark I'd run against. I had beaten him twice indoors that winter. But I never met those two, and I knew they were going to be tough. Finally, in the afternoon, about 2:30, I got dressed to go out to the stadium. I remember walking down, I had my raincoat on, I had my hat on, and all my track clothes underneath. I had to walk about 200 meters before I got to the main entrance of the Olympic Village where I could catch a bus. I made it down there and got on the bus with the bus driver and 2 other athletes. I didn't recognize either one of them. The 3 of us rode around to different venues until they got to the Olympic Stadium, and 2 of us got off. I made my way inside the back entrance of the stadium, and all of a sudden 2 coaches ran up to me. "Bob, where have you been? Where have you been?" And I'm thinking, my gosh, did I read the time wrong? And my adrenaline now is just shooting. And I'm thinking to myself, why? What's wrong? And he says, "Well, you've only got an hour and 10 minutes before your race." I said, "Yeah, that's what I want." And so then you try and calm yourself down again. Well, I went into a little room where the U.S. team had. Every country had a small room someplace in that stadium. And I went inside, and I was not too wet. I had my raincoat. I took it off, and I was starting to go over to lay it in a corner someplace. And Willie Davenport, a hurdler, one of our best and one of the world's best, was standing in the middle of the room, dripping wet. And so I knew he had just finished one of his trial races, the first race for the hurdlers. No trouble for U.S. people to go through that first heat. My land, it was just cakewalk for them. So as I walked by, I said, pat him on the back, and I said, "Well, how'd it go?" And the response was not what I expected. He turned towards me, and he looked me in the eyes. He says, "Bob, I didn't make it." Well, when somebody says that sort of thing, and you all can understand this, you don't want to be there. I had a race to run, and I didn't want anybody telling me anything about I didn't make it. But I couldn't get away because he kept talking. And he said, "You know, I got a great start. I was supposed to win this heat easy." He said, "I got over the first hurdle fine. I was out in the lead. Second hurdle, I started to pull away." He said, "I came over the 3rd hurdle, and when I started to drive off, I felt my spikes slip in the mud, because it was pretty muddy on that track." He said, "The next hurdle, I hit a little bit. Came up to the next hurdle and hit it even harder because now I was behind. My steps were way off. And I thought, oh, come on. I want to get out of here." Well, he said, "I couldn't make the next one." He said, "I just literally jumped it. Couldn't make it." Tears now were starting to come down his cheeks. And he turned away. "What do you say?" I couldn't say anything. You just stand there. I reached out, put my hand on his shoulder, and went over to put my bag against the wall so I could go warm up. When I left the room, I tried to forget that. And just outside our room, there was this big great area where there was a dirt floor, and the other guys now were running around in a circle around this dirt. And so it was 50 minutes before the race, and so I started to jog. Pretty soon, I felt this presence. Have you ever done that where you feel somebody staring at you, and you turn around, and sure enough, somebody's staring at you. Well, that's what it felt like. And so I looked over my shoulder, and the two Russians who were in my race, Dutov was one, were right behind me, so close they were almost stepping on my heels. And I thought to myself, what are they doing? Well, I knew what they were doing because the Russians did play mind games. And so they were just trying to upset me. And so I pulled off the track for a little bit, let them go by. When an opening came in again, I went back to jogging. It wasn't very long before I felt that presence again, and sure enough, there they were. Well, this time I smiled to myself, wasn't much else I could do, and just kept jogging, and after I didn't react to it, they left. 20 minutes before the race, we had to check into a small room. I headed for the room, and outside the room there was all of our names, 12 people that were in the final, and then a green and a red light. And as you came over, we had been instructed to hit the green button to turn that light on. Well, as I came over, my light was already on. And one of the coaches was standing right there, and I said, "It looks like you already pressed the button." He says, "I'm not taking any chances that you get disqualified." He says, "Lights on." So I went inside, and it was kind of a church pew, a bench. I was the last one in, everybody else was already there. And I sat down in the second seat because that was my assignment on the track. We sat there for quite some time until I was getting a little fidgety. And I looked over to my right side, and Michel Jazzy had leaned forward also and was looking to his left. And our eyes met, and then instantly turned away. Because Jazzy was going to be my best competition. He was the one in the lead coming down that straightaway. A great French runner. Finally, it was time to walk underneath in the tunnels to where the 5,000 started. And we sat there as we had sat there a day before, 2 days before, and put on our spikes. Nobody said a word. Nobody had said a word in that room, not even the officials who were kind of milling around trying to keep order if they had to. It was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. We put on our spikes, and I tried to go up the 2 steps to the track. And some of the biggest Japanese I had ever seen were standing in my way. Nobody was getting up those 2 steps. It was pretty cold. It was 51 degrees and raining. Finally, it came time for us to go up, and they motioned us to go forward. We went up the track. We had only one chance to run down about 40 meters, and they called us back to the line. Now, all of you understand that 20 minutes sitting in a room waiting for your race is not the best idea. And all of us were, all the warm-up had almost disappeared. When that rain hit us at 51 degrees, it was chilly. It was so dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon that they had to turn the lights on to see across the track. But they called us back to the line. The starter came over and gave us instructions in Japanese, which everybody just sort of nodded. There wasn't a Japanese runner in the bunch. Finally, he walked away and walked over into the grass, put his pistol in the air, and with words that we did not understand, but yet understood, he gave the commands and fired the gun. Well, you saw the finish. What a great finish that was, wasn't it? Yeah. I look back on those days, and it's almost as if it happened yesterday. Here I am, 71 years old, thinking that I'd like to compete again, but a little hip replacement a year and a half ago is stopping that for now. Football players are still here. Yes, some of them. I want to tell you how this came about, because it's one of my Miami stories. I played football when I was a junior in high school. I was 130 pounds, 5'11". I had no business playing football. We had been league champs probably for 4 or 5 years. Not a big school, but the kids were, 180, 190, 200, 210 pounds. And a 130-pounder out there does not do very well. Well, during the time we got our equipment, I was one of the last people to get equipment, obviously. And they had run out of hip pads by that time, and so I didn't get any hip pads. The coach scrimmaged every night. So I played the league champs every night in a full-blown scrimmage. Well, one day, we were on offense, those people who warmed the bench during the games. There was a Statue of Liberty play. And I was the right end, and I came back, and our basketball coach was being the quarterback, and he handed me the ball, and I was around left hand, and I was down about 10 meters. I don't know why I use meters all the time, but I do. But anyway, all of a sudden, bam, the halfback hit me on my right side. And my bell was rung. There was no question about that. I kind of staggered to my feet, got back in the huddle, and played the rest of the day. The next morning,